Yes, sir. Thank you for those of you that are just arriving. If you will be so kind as to sign in. If you don't have the opportunity to do it now, please make sure prior to your departure that you sign in. And again, our survey is available and posted for you to take the survey. Keisha, Donna. Good evening, everyone. The time is now 6 o'clock and we will begin. We want to be respectful of your time. We appreciate you coming out this cold Texas evening. But again, we welcome you. This is the second of our annual community planning meetings. I am Rashawn Smith. I am the Community Development Grants Programs Manager for the City of Killeen. Before we begin, we ask just a few housekeeping items. If you will, please put your phone on silent. Again, if you didn't have the opportunity to do so, to sign in for us, please do so. But if you did not, make sure prior to your departure, you do. We like to, HUD likes to know who attends our meetings, so please sign in. There is bathrooms on this first floor if you need restrooms. And we will do our presentation, and then we will have our Let's Talk conversation following the presentation. So we will have our question and answer session then. For those of you that are joining us virtually, please make sure to put your information in the chat, your name. If you are representing an agency, please list that agency and your email. That will be the virtual sign-in. If you do wish to speak during our question and answer session, please proceed to the mic. Please state your name, and if you can make sure you're speaking loudly so those that are attending virtually can hear your question. If you are attending virtually, you definitely can put your question in the chat. We have someone monitoring that, and we will read your question aloud and attempt to answer your question. So today we are simply here to go over our 5-year consolidated plan. The City of Killeen is an entitlement community, and we are mandated to do a 5-year consolidated strategic plan every 5 years. So in developing that plan, we are required to get our citizens' input. So this community planning meeting. Again, we're here, no decisions are being made regarding any funding or anything. This is simply a conversation to get what you, as citizens of our community, deem your priorities. So in developing our 5-year strategic plan, we have opted to work with a consultant this year. J-Quad Planning Group is a nationally recognized firm who has over 25 years' experience and has worked with numerous government entities, nonprofits, and private industries in plan development, such as consolidated strategic plans, which that is what we are working on. We're excited to work with J-Quad in developing the plan for our community. And we welcome Mr. James Gillian, who will present the first part of our presentation. Staff will follow up and in another portion of the presentation, and then we'll have our Let's Talk session. So thank you.
So thank you, and good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you all for being here. Your input is very important. This plan helps to bring community development funds to the City of Killeen to address community needs. And so you're part of the process of giving input, which will also be shared with the City Council in terms of how you'd like to see the funds utilized. So tonight, what we wanted to do is walk you through how these funds can be used, the types of activities that they can support, and hopefully get your input on it. Again, I just want to point out the survey is designed with a series of questions so that you can give us your input directly. And everyone and anyone can take the survey from the community. So even people who are not here and those who are listening online with us have the opportunity to complete the survey as well. I'm going to go through just some background information on the plan itself, and then we'll ask that if you would come up to the mic if you'd like to ask any questions or share input directly tonight. These funds have been available since 1995 to communities to address community needs. It requires that the City of Killeen produce a strategic plan that identifies what your local priorities are and what your local needs are for the use of the funds. So our focus tonight will be primarily on how these funds can be used and what you think the priorities ought to be. It is a 5-year plan, so your input that you're giving is designed to understand what you'd like to see addressed in the community for the next 5 years. So the first funding year will be August of this year. So the input that you're sharing tonight will help advise the city as to how you'd like to see the funds used. There are 5 basic areas where these funds can be used. They can be used for housing, particularly for affordable housing, economic development and job creation, Public services, which there's a wide range of types of public services that it can be used for. And it can also be used to expand public facilities, recreation, and even infrastructure, things like sidewalk, curb, gutter within the community. These funds come directly from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we also, as a city, receive supplemental funding. If you recall, when COVID occurred, there were some special funds that were available to address rental assistance and support to people who were encountering difficulty during the pandemic. In order for the City of Killeen to receive the funds, they have to first go through a community development process. This is primarily designed for you to give your input as citizens of the city as to how you'd like to see the funds used, and also to outline what particular types of activities can be funded. The first year of this plan, as I indicated earlier, will be for 2025. The City Council will give its approval for how the funds will be used as of August 15th of this year. And then each August 15th, you'll have an opportunity to give input for the next 4 years after that. Just to give you an idea of the funding, Congress appropriates funding every year for every eligible city, county, state that can participate in the program. It is the actual amount of funding is set by Congress, approximately 3.7 for this current program year, the 5-year, and then a little over 1.8 for the home or housing related activities that are eligible. There are principally 7 different activities that can be funded. So again, it's a block grant. The city decides exactly how it wants to utilize the funds that it receives, and it can use it in any of these 7 areas. They're not required to expend or support activities in every activity. They can choose to use the funds in any way. So community facilities are eligible, things like recreation and so forth, community services, infrastructure, which could include everything from utilities to sidewalks, curbs, and gutter, neighborhood services, special needs services, economic development, and housing can all be supported with the funds. To give you an idea of the amount of funding and how it can be used, approximately $1.3 million was the entitlement amount for this past year for 2024. Being a block grant again, when you see the use column, that means that these are the limitations in terms of how the funds can be used. So up to 65%, a little over $862,000 can be used for any of those 7 activities. Only 20% can be used for administration of the program, and then public services, everything from senior services to child recreation type services is limited to 15% of the total grant. Any funds that does not get utilized during the program year can be used the following year. Affordable housing, by Congress definition, up to 75% of the funds can be used for affordable housing. 15% can be used for community development organizations that would provide any type of services under the program. And then administration of the program is limited to 10% of the total grant. The stipulations that Congress has put in place is that in order to utilize the funds, you have 3 different national objectives, and you have to meet as a city at least one of those objectives. So it has to either benefit low and moderate income persons, it has to aid in preventing or eliminating slum and blighted conditions in the community, or it can be used to respond to natural disasters, COVID being one of those that we faced in recent years. In terms of who qualifies, there are two ways in which the benefits can be provided to residents within the community. Up to 51% of the people within a given census tract, if they are considered low and moderate income, and as you see, low and moderate income is defined by household size and percent of income. So if a family of four lives within that census tract, that family income can go up to $60,250, and the family would still qualify for any of the benefits. So an example would be a family of four buying a house, and they want to apply for down payment closing cost assistance. As long as their total income for a family of four doesn't exceed $60,250, they would qualify for those funds and could apply for those funds, could be used to pay down payment closing costs. And these are grants, so they are not required to pay those funds back. Of course, it's competitive, so they would have to apply, be the first in line or to receive the funds in order to access it. We always point that out because a lot of times we have residents who tend to disqualify themselves because they'll say, well, this is not going to apply to me based on my income, but we stress the fact that we'd like you to share with other people, your neighbors and people in your community, that if they're buying a house, for example, they can earn up to $60,000 and still possibly receive a grant for the down payment closing costs. So it's important that we don't eliminate ourselves from the ability to get that funding. It does come with requirements. There's a community engagement process, so we have to make sure that the public is informed that these funds exist and how they can apply for those funds. And then there's an analytical component where data has to be collected to support need within the community. So there's a housing market analysis that shows within this community how much people are having to pay for housing and how the housing can be supported through these grant funds. It also supports issues relative to homelessness. So making sure that people aren't on the streets, aren't homeless. There are also non-community development type activities that supported everything from transportation to public services, senior youth services, those sorts of things. There's also a needs assessment. So Killeen itself, we analyze the needs within this jurisdiction, and then the funds have to be applied to activities that are supported in terms of their need. And again, that plan covers the next 5 years. So it's intended to, although conducted annually, to support needs for a total of 5 years. There's also a provision that the city works to remove things like acts of discrimination, any type of impediment that might be creating a problem for people to access housing and community development needs. So part of the way it's determined is through community engagement. So again, that's why we stress the need to get people within the community to give us input as to where people might be encountering any kind of issues relative to housing and community development. There are elements of the plan. On the right side, it's data that's collected to support needs, so things like the housing market and housing needs, homeless needs, and those types of activities. And then on the left side of the chart, or the required documentation that the City of Killeen has to produce in order to be eligible to receive the funds from the federal government. So again, strategic needs can be addressed in housing, economic development, public services, and other needs that are described in the regulations. To give you an idea of the housing priorities, it can address housing rehabilitation. So there, in some instances, there might be funding for persons who want to repair their homes or to purchase their homes or to improve their homes. It also supports things like workforce and workforce development and programs designed to help people get jobs. And then neighborhood revitalization, things like improving the neighborhood, streets, roads, utilities, and so forth. It can also be used for code enforcement, things that would lead to removal of slum and blighted conditions within the community as well. It's also designed to support economic development within the city, so technical assistance to small businesses. It could be job creation, employment training, workforce development. It could even be workforce readiness. So how do we attract industries to the city that will provide jobs? And then also making sure that the labor force is able to access those jobs once they're created within the community. It also covers public and community facilities, public improvements like infrastructure, parks and recreation, even support for education and job training and that sort of thing. Our public service needs covers a wide range of activities, so activities for youth and seniors, homeless prevention and homeless services, transitional housing for people who might be encountering abuse within the home and that sort of thing. And it can also support transportation, meals, food insecurity, health care, mental health. Again, it's a block grant, so once the city council determines how it will apply the funds, that entire amount is subject to any of those activities. There's also a provision for addressing needs that you did not anticipate as a city at the time that you're giving input on how you'd like to see the funds used in the future. For example, supplemental funding is made available to the community for disaster assistance. So let's say Killeen incurred a tornado or some type of disaster that it didn't anticipate. This funding can also be used for those kind of activities. And typically, if it encounters a disaster, there are provisions for additional funding that we've provided for those unanticipated kind of activities that you didn't anticipate at the time that you were making recommendations as to how the funds should be used. Rashonda's going to come back and talk about some special initiatives under the home program.
Okay. A few slides into Mr. Gillian's presentation. He mentioned about some supplemental funding in addition to those two entitlements, CDBG and HOME. So HOME ARP was one of those, the American Rescue Plan. So these special funds were appropriated under the American Rescue Plan Act in 2021 under the previous administration. This funding was designed and designated to reduce homelessness and increase housing stability for qualifying individuals and families who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, and other vulnerable populations. There are some subpopulations within that. And through those attempts, there are eligible activities in these four categories that the funding can be used for supportive services, acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter. So our local shelter, Families in Crisis, that's a congregate shelter. This would be for non-congregate shelters. Tenant-based rental assistance, which we call TBRA, and development and support of affordable rental housing. There are qualified populations that have to be served through this funding, and that's homelessness as defined by 24 Code of Federal Regulation 91.5, so it has to meet that definition of homelessness. At risk of homelessness, and those individuals fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, as defined by HUD. And then those other populations, other families requiring services or housing to prevent homelessness. I think veterans fall within that category, that subpopulation. So the City of Killeen's Home ARP set aside, this was the plan that was submitted, approved by council and submitted to HUD. And with the allocation, total allocation that the City of Killeen received, these were the breakdown of funding for those eligible activities. So for supportive services, the amount of funding is $700,000. The acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter, $500,000. That tenant-based rental assistance, around $1,100,000. Affordable rental housing, $200,000. And then there's an amount set aside for the administration and planning to administer these home ARP funds. Next, I will review the Section 108 Legacy Challenge Loan Pool. HUD has issued a challenge in this previous year for Section 108. Section 108 is a loan guarantee program through HUD that allows our CDBG entitlement. And in those slides, if you recall, Mr. Gillian, it was about 1.3 million. That allows a community to borrow up to 5 times its CDBG allocation, and it's federally backed financing. With the Section 108 Legacy Challenge that has been issued by HUD, they are targeting up to $250 million of its loan authority, and they're allowing for some flexibility to applicants who choose to utilize their Section 108. And it can be used for housing development projects and other Section 108 eligible activities. And we will go over a few of those eligible activities. So what can Section 108 be used for? Acquisition of real property, rehabilitation of housing, economic development projects, and you see a few here, hotels, office parks, grocery stores, mixed-use development where you could have your retail and living space combinations, public facilities and infrastructure improvements, and then activities that will support new housing construction. And your community-based development organizations, which we will partner with to support construction of new units. So again, if you see here what our entitlement was for our block grant, and this would be the borrowing authority under the Section 108. So it would be a loan pool, so we would have this money. You would have developers that may want to come in and do affordable housing. If economic development, if you have a company that will come in and want to do business that will be economic for the community. Let me see what else would be. Your community-based development organizations. Those are your nonprofit organizations that are designed to do affordable housing, and they will build new construction, new units.
So the city would borrow this ahead of time and the pot of money would be there for when the.
It would, it's a loan pool. Did I go back? So, and this is a good slide for you and may answer some of those questions. These are potential projects for the city of Killeen that we could use that Section 108. So potential products may include, again, that mixed-use development, expansion of the Killeen Reunification Center that we're currently working on, that might want to provide some additional supportive services if they want to have counseling services on site, some of those in-house supportive services. Investment in North Killeen revitalization area. Elimination of that slum and blight, which we talked about in regular block grant. Yes, Ms. Brown, do you want to wait until we get to our question and answer, or? Okay, thank you. For once. And then expansion of our Killeen Library at the main branch. Things like a small business hub that could be in there where you have rooms for community organizations that may want to come in and have rooms at the library, or even a children's library area for our main library branch. So those are just some potential uses. Okay, you were just one slide away. And if you have a question, remember, if you will come to the mic and state your name so that our virtual community may hear you.
Sorry, I broke the rules.
Rashawn, is there a way to repeat Maureen's question?
Oh,
She
okay.
doesn't have the microphone.
Let me try to summarize the question that was asked. Maureen Jewett asked for an example of who would be a potential user for the Section 108 loan pool. And again, I think I provided an example. Developers that may want to come in and develop those income-producing projects. They do have to demonstrate the ability to pay the Section 108. So there's underwriting involved that HUD has to approve. So we're not just getting the loan pool and getting the money and hand it out. There are underwriting guidelines that have to be followed with that. Mr. Barry Jones, can you get to that microphone from me, or you want me to hand it to you? I'm not a city council member. Yes, sir.
My name is Bear Jones. My question is to you, sir. That chart you had up there, can you bring it back up where the, about money? Keep going. Right there. Right there. Okay. My question is, you said is that the congressman and the senators and stuff allocate so much money to this program. Does it have a time limit? The city have to use that or not?
Yes. In fact, you get a contribution every year.
Every year?
Every year, and that's laid out in one-year increments. And then the city has to expend those funds within, you have to commit them within 2 years and expend them within 3 years. So let's say if the city elected to build sidewalks, curb, and gutter, They would have to identify that as a priority need, and then they would need to commit those funds within 2 years
You say you had 3 years to complete it.
to complete the project, but they would have to commit them to a particular activity within 2 years.
Okay, now every year you get money from Congressman anyway. So that can be added on each time in order to reinforce what you want to do.
Right, so let's say the city decided to allocate $1 million to sidewalk, curb, and gutter. They would announce the program as eligible in August of this year. And then people would be allowed to make application, let's say for down payment and closing costs. Once you're approved for that program year funding in August of this year, the city would make those funds available within the next 2 years. So you could apply for them, and as long as the funds are committed and then expended, and there are provisions for extending, you know, if people have special circumstances in which it takes longer, but it has to be committed and expended within that time frame.
Okay, you okay? This question for you, ma'am. Now, who gonna make sure these projects are being finished on time and make sure they done right?
So staff, you see that portion of administrative and planning, that is staff's responsibility. And in that slide, Mr. Gillian showed as that circle that had, part of that is monitoring. We're required to monitor the program. And monthly, we work with subrecipients who receive those funds to make sure that the program is administered in a timely fashion. Because if we don't, as he gave those timeframes, the city could be in a timeliness issue. So staff works to administer and monitor the programs.
Okay, now, that 15% include payroll and all that stuff, right? Admin? Or that's
Oh,
separate?
for this particular program of home art. And for the block grant, and let me see if I can flip back to those other slides
So
for,
in other words, the 15% covers all the cost of administering the program. So everything from taking the application to actually providing the funding, whether it be for housing or community development. So only up to 15% can be used to administer the program. The rest of it has to actually go into funding the activity itself.
Okay? Thank you.
you're welcome. Is there a virtual question? Okay.
And I have a question, I have two questions and two answers. Remote Notary Central Texas asked, what are some of the examples of discrimination that has and can occur? The answer for that question is the Fair Housing Act makes it illegal to harass persons because of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. One may be denied housing based on protected class, asked to pay more than market rent based on protected class, asked to exchange something other than money for access to housing based on protected class. The second question is, what was that saying with the zero for nonprofits? The answer to that question is correct. In 2021, council elected not to set aside funds for nonprofit operating and capacity building for home art.
Okay. One point I wanted to reiterate, I know Mr. Gillian talked about in August is when our annual action plan, what we said, what was decided would be the action, how we would utilize the funds is due to HUD. We call it our annual action plan. So you have your 5-year consolidated plan, but each year we do our action plans, and this is the action that we're going to take to do projects that will benefit our low to moderate income population. But the program year actually starts October 1st. So those are when funding actually becomes available. Our program year goes from October 1st through September 30th.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay. First question is, this is just a question portion before we give our input and comments, right? Okay. So to go forward back to the home ARP, because they are separate from the block grants. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Melissa Brown.
Thanks for helping
Thank you,
monitor.
Mr. Jones. Melissa Brown. So to go back to the home ARP grants, I just want to clarify one thing on how we have it broken down. And we have the statutory maximum limits for the ones that are listed. We have the 2 areas that are listed at 0%. So for nonprofit operating, nonprofit capacity building, those are things that the city could optionally include in any funding we get through home ARP set-asides, correct? So for example, let me help you with that. So for example, nonprofit operating, since this is for home ARP, if we wanted to put money into FIC out of home ARP instead of taking it out of the general fund, that could be something we use as part of that set aside, as long as it doesn't exceed 5% of our total allocation.
So this is the plan that was approved. So these amounts are set aside. So no, we can't, because this plan has been approved, submitted and approved by council and submitted to HUD.
And so when?
This plan was approved in 2022.
So then in 2027, we could change that. Is that also a 5-year plan, or is that just indefinitely?
No,
moving forward?
this plan was adopted, and this is the
So but we can
plan.
amend it.
City council could.
Yeah, as a
Thank you.
city, it could be amended if we had other needs that came up where instead of needing $500,000 each year for congregate shelters, and we needed it for nonprofit operating, it could be amended by the city with the approval of the city council or something like that, correct?
Yes, we will have to do, a substantial amendment to our plan, and then, yes, modify this plan.
Okay, and then the other question has to do with 108. So with the 108, what would be the benefit to the city as a whole to take on up to a little over $6 million in a loan pool amount? And in the interim, who pays interest on that? So if we apply for that $6 million or so dollars, and we don't have anybody applying for it right away, are we paying interest on that in the interim?
I can do.
Thank you.
So, these funds are grant, so the city is not required, as long as it meets the regulations and the standards, they will not have to repay those funds. So it's a block grant, and if you're borrowing under your Section 108 provision, it means that you're still going to meet all the regulations, but you're borrowing, and those funds will have to be either repaid or deducted from your future grant. So you're limiting how much you will receive from HUD for activities if you choose to move forward with Section 108.
Okay, so that
So you're borrowing
from our future ability to get the
Yeah.
direct grant. So then where's the benefit to the city for that?
let's say if the city decides it wants to do a project that's going to exceed the amount that is eligible to receive in 1 year, then they could expand that activity, complete the project right now, and then would have to find another source of funds in the future.
Oh, appreciate it, thank you.
One thing I want to add on that may assist also, Ms. Brown, is that the city can pledge revenues from other income streams, that's an option. Besides its entitlement, if there are parking revenues, these are just some examples from other cities, but there are other revenue streams that can be pledged for that.
Kyle
State your
Moore.
name, thank you.
Just, you kind of answered the question that I was kind of gonna touch on as far as that 108, that $6 million or whatnot. And I'm a very remedial person, so forgive me. So I got a couple of examples. When I was looking through there, it said affordable housing and rehabilitation, right? So just a question, let's just say, and this would have to be a city project, correct? So it had to be under the guise of the city, or, for example, a few years ago, we made a proposal to revitalize the Moss Rose area. We talk about having affordable housing, and realistically, it costs about $1 million. I mean, I'm just shooting from the hip. It'd be more than that, but about $1 million to make that. That's 12 buildings over there, and I want to say it's about 60 to 75 units that range from 1 bedrooms all the way to 4 bedrooms. Now, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I get it, they're over 50 years old. And I'm just giving an example. Let's just say the city said, I know the city's not gonna do this, forgive me, but we're gonna take those and utilize these funds to now create affordable housing. Would that have to be, again, would that have to be under the guise of the city, or would that be under the guise of some other organization that's saying, hey, we'll go ahead and run this apartment complex or whatnot? And is it because it says rehabilitation? Y'all following me what I'm trying to say? I forget. So say they took $2 million and then they said, hey, boom, we're gonna put $2 million in there and we revitalize all that, right? Would that have to be a city project, or would that have to be like an organization that's operating on behalf of the city to like run it, manage it?
So the city is eligible, but I think as this community-based development organization, if there was a CDBO that wanted to take on that project, they would be an eligible entity for that.
Thank you.
So just to clarify though, any funding
It would be for them.
the city is still obligated to repay those funds to HUD. So it's a block grant. Let's say an organization like Salvation Army came in and we're going to build X number of units. It would be an eligible activity. They would carry out that activity in accordance with the HUD regulations.
Gotcha.
But under Section 108 loan guarantee, it's giving the city the opportunity to go ahead and advance funds to Salvation Army to
Complete
take
the
care
task.
of that project. And then those funds still would have to be repaid.
So, and just to clarify on that part, yes, I get they have to repay the funds, but let's just say they're collecting, we're not giving the units to people, but let's just say we're
Renting.
making rents, collecting rents, deposits, whatnot. Would that now be able to just go back towards paying the loan?
Yeah, it is still a block grant, which technically the city doesn't have to repay as long as it carries out the activity in accordance with the HUD regulations.
Okay.
But it's not an endless supply of funds. So those funds would be available, you complete the activity, and then you could reinvest as a city any return on that investment in the next activity.
And last thing, so that information doesn't get lost, what Ms. Brown asked. So basically, if we borrowed against that, that does affect what we would have
In the
moving
future.
forward. Gotcha.
Right.
I have two questions from the chat, and they're from the same person. It's from Vaughn Fraley. The first question is, so nonprofits wouldn't be funded till 2027. The answer is that's not correct. Speaker is offering a hypothetical. No money will be made available in 2027 unless a substantial amendment is submitted and approved by HUD. The next question is, how do you start that process as a nonprofit? The answer is, let's see. For home ARP, nonprofits can apply for CDBG public service funds.
We'll get to some slides that kind of talk about important dates, but the Section 108 Legacy Challenge, we plan to put together a draft application. In July, this application is due to HUD. There's public comments and public hearing that has to take place with that. So again, today is just a conversation, but there's always opportunity for you all to have your input, those public hearings, when the drafts for the consolidated plan, the annual action plan that we do annually, those plans are posted for comment. Always comment, because we do have to report those comments to HUD. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to have your input.
Evening. Steve Height. My question has to do.
Steve Height?
Height, yes.
Okay.
My question has to do with the financial chart you showed up there. On one of them, the administrative costs were the second highest, and on the other one, the administrative costs were the third highest out of all the priorities there. And why is that so much? I mean, that's more than the development of affordable rental housing, which is very critical in this area.
So those are,
Can I
Oh,
answer
yeah.
that? Okay, so the administrative part of the home ARP, we have until 2030 to expend those funds. So the administrative has to go until 2030 to expend that particular funding.
Okay, so that money there will cover like a
Yes, sir,
5-year
until-
period.
Up until 2030.
And the supportive services, how long is that?
That just depends on who applies for the funds and how quickly they can take care of supportive services. Correct?
yes, I wanted you to speak into the mic. Oh, is that me?
Okay.
So if you have an organization that wants to provide supportive service, if you have 5 or 2, and they have an eligible activity, they could apply for those funds, and then they will be distributed those funds. Are there any additional questions? Any questions from the chat?
Hi, Latasha Shaw, sorry. On the organizations that they have to support all of this, how do we get involved, like, to support the different type of organization? Where do we find that information?
On how to get involved
Right.
with the various
support them.
organizations. Well, I mean, throughout the city, there are several nonprofits. We definitely have a list of our nonprofits or subrecipients, but all throughout the town, I guess we have a nonprofit directory. We can see if we can find some information
Yeah,
for
or
you,
just,
but.
I mean, just the support. I'm not trying to like create anything, do anything, but just how can I just like give you this or that? Because, you know, a lot of times it's a couple of, like, even like downtown, you know, we just help them, but what's the organization that we can help? That's all I
Well,
want, like, how do I know which one to donate
I'll
to?
give you an example, well, who will you donate, but for instance, the Central Texas Homeless Coalition, and I think Officer Moore here, they are a coalition of nonprofit organizations, so, that will be, I call it a one-stop, you have a one-stop shop. That coalition has several organizations that they are a part of.
Okay, okay. All right, that answered, thank you.
That's just an example, but
Yes,
there's
ma'am.
several.
Okay, thank you.
Just one clarification, the gentleman had asked a question about the amount of funds that can be used for particular activities. Just keep in mind that when we say 15% or up to 15% can be expended for administration and planning, that means that during the life of the grant, no more than 15% can be expended on planning and administration. The rest has to be to support the activity itself. So those limitations are there to make sure that the funding is set aside for the activity and that we don't overexpend dollars for administration and planning and those kinds of activities.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
To clarify the two questions that were asked for Von Fraley. The question, how do you start that process as a nonprofit? The answer for that question is nonprofits can apply for CDBG public service funds. So that's how they would apply for those funds. And then so nonprofits won't be funded till 2027. That's not correct. The speaker is offering hypothetical. Nonprofits will need to apply for CDBG public service funds. There is another question from Gail Perez. It states, if an investment group came in to repair or manage CDBO, could loan not grant? Could CDBO loan but not provide a grant? Could they provide a loan?
Is it for the legacy? What are we
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about? Which funding are we talking about?
It doesn't specify. It says, if an investment group came in to repair or manage, could CDBO loan not grant?
That they could apply for a loan through the loan pool.
That's the answer.
Yeah. They loan, not grant. Okay, any more questions? So as we begin, we're well into our grant cycle. This will give you an overview, and again, these dates are subject to change. See our disclaimer there. We will have a technical workshop for those entities that are interested in applying for block grant. You will see in Sunday's paper, we will have a notice of available funding posted in that for our block grant home and home ARP. So that notice of funding availability, notifying the public that these funds are available for your entities to apply. After that the technical workshop, we will have a pre-application. And you see the schedule here, the pre-application, the open and close dates for that. for those entities that have a successful pre-application, you meet one of those national objectives, completed your your pre-application, those applicants will then have access to the full application. That full application will close, and that will go to CDAC. CDAC is a 10-member committee that is appointed by council. They hear from applicants with regard to their project. They do a presentation. CDAC in turns make recommendations. That's the action plan. So that will be our action plan for this first year. CDAC does not make those decisions. Those in turn go before council, and then council votes on that action plan, which then is turned into HUD. And that's the August date that Mr. Gillian mentioned prior to. And again, that funding is not released or available for those subrecipients until October 1st. That starts the 25 program year. You have a question, Ms. Brown?
Again, Melissa Brown. Speaking of this coming up in front of City Council and the City Council making the decisions, how does this tie in with the comprehensive plan? I know HUD doesn't require for it to comply with our comprehensive plan, but on the city level, how much does that weigh into staff recommendation and how it will be presented by CDAC when it comes to council? And I primarily ask because in the comprehensive plan, one of our primary areas of emphasis is providing more services, especially in the downtown area, for the homeless population, but not just in North Killeen, because that population is spreading south across the city. So would that play into the recommendations made for the plan?
So yes, ma'am. When the CDAC committee convenes, they are all the comprehensive plan, our homeless and mental health strategic plan that was adopted. That's a combination of things that we look at as priorities for a community. So the citizens' input, our adopted plans are all utilized in making those priority needs and those recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
So again, you will see from our important dates, you have several opportunities to give your input. Once the draft plan is posted, we're required to have a 30-day comment period. And then the public hearing, you have the opportunity to come and at the public hearing and provide comment to council. Yes, ma'am.
There's a question in the chat from Melanie Farr. Will the pre-app technical workshop be offered virtually? The answer to that question is no, in person. An organization may send a representative to attend.
Thank you. The question was asked, will this presentation be available on the website? Yes, the presentation will be available on the website. In addition to the survey is actually up. The survey is on the website, and the notice of funding availability will be posted on the website as well. The community development. On the city's website, tab Community Development, you will find all the information, presentations, survey, and our contact information if you have additional questions after this.
Okay. This is from Kristen Wright, Colleen Creators. It would be helpful to know how a nonprofit who works to support people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness can be more involved with developing a system of care. In the past, we've heard mostly about the 15% Public Services Fund as the only money we can access. But many of us are also working toward and would expand workforce development and providing supported housing services to people in recovery with mental health and SUD. If we knew how to partner with the city in this kind of facility, workforce / service development to better support and coordinate our efforts for mutual sustainability, is there a chance a small group of interested nonprofits could be brought together to specifically explore how we could better coordinate so nonprofits are supported rather than city continuing to expand delivery of direct services? The answer to that is a great idea. Sergeant Moore and I have been having such talks. I'll be in touch. Okay, let's see. Gail Perez is also asking in the chat, what time is the pre-app technical workshop?
That workshop, you can say, is gonna be from, I believe, 1 to 3 p.m. But again, this will
Rashawn, I
be
have the
post-
answer to it.
Thank you.
It is going to be 1 to 3 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you. The 20th, February 20th, at the Community Development Training Room. But that will be posted on our page as well. Well, if there are no additional questions, or if you think of questions later, we may be contacted at this email address, phone number, and we greatly appreciate you coming to provide your input. Ms. Brown, you have a final question? Oh, you have comment? Okay. Oh, to remind, yeah, if you did not have the opportunity to sign in, or you came in later after the presentation, please sign in for us so we can let HUD know we did get citizen input. All right, Ms. Brown.
I promised I'd let everybody get questions before I came up with my thoughts. Again, Melissa Brown. Even just going based off of the questions in the survey, I think some of the things that are more needed are the sidewalks, crosswalks, and streetlights for safety all around the city, but particularly in the low-income areas where we tend to have the least amount of streetlights, the least amount of sidewalks, the least amount of crosswalks, and we have more children that are walking to and from places. Mental health care, I can't think of any real inpatient mental health care that's open to the public that doesn't have insurance right now in the Killeen area. Drug and alcohol rehab and support. We have one drug and alcohol rehab facility that we've partnered with, but they only accept male patients, and we don't have any of that for females. AA meetings or NA meetings, those are really difficult to come across. Again, I'll say low income and homelessness is not confined just to North Killeen. So I would hope that this is not just the North Killeen revitalization area that would be receiving these services or money in the future, that it would be spread out to all of the areas of low income across the city, while continuing to support our Head Start, because that's something I hadn't seen talked about in here, but something that I think we have greatly underfunded in our community. Replacing aging infrastructure, but then I think two of the things that are the biggest to me is, one, I don't think we should be paying salary for code enforcement, especially that's going into targeted areas that are low-income families where they're just going to get fined. So if they don't have the money already, then why are we sending in and paying for someone out of the funds that are supposed to help them that are going to turn around and cost them money? And then when it comes to 108 or home ARP, regardless of whether it's using that loan program or not, I agree that with what Sergeant Moore said, we have an entire apartment complex that was designed for low-income housing that is still viable. It just takes a little bit of investment, whether it's by the city or nonprofits. But also we have a grocery store, a food desert. And if we're able to use any of this funding to help support a grocery store, even if it's to provide money to, for economic development that would come in and provide those food services, then I think that's something where we should definitely be concentrating that money on, because we've been waiting for close to a decade now, and we haven't come up with any other viable solutions. So, thank you.
One point, Ms. Brown talked about the funding, not funding, but to service, again, we know our homeless is growing citywide. I just wanted to point out, as required and mandated by HUD for these funds, is that the area benefit, it has to be in those census tracts for the below area medium income. So as much as we would like to help across the city, we're required to expend those funds in those low to moderate income areas. And that was something else you said, Ms. Brown.
For the map that we have with the census tracts, the North Killeen revitalization area is in the blue and orange up here, correct?
Yes, I believe.
Okay, so does that mean anything in the orange or red would also be predominantly in that 51% or more low or moderate income based, or at least 80% AMI based on the percentage numbers that are shown on the back of that list?
That's correct.
So then that literally makes it almost the entire city. There is very few parts of the city that don't have 50% or 51% or more of the persons in that census tract that are not 80% or below the AMI, according to the information provided at this meeting. So that's why I'm saying, I understand that we have a large concentration in the North Killeen revitalization zone, which is why that was originally designed that way 5 years ago. But our need is spreading as the population moves around, as we put up more tax credit housing in these different parts of the city, as there's more low-income housing specifically being developed in other parts of the city. We need to also shift that focal point away from just one area while maintaining the concentration on not just North Killeen low income, but citywide. They all deserve the assistance.
Thank you.
And then my other part was about, I think, because you've gone to look when I was talking about continuing to fund Head Start. And so I think that, again, right now we have 2 Head Start centers in North Killeen. We don't have any Head Start program outside of the North Killeen area. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Another question from Gail Perez in a comment. Her comment is, I have sent in Messenger and email and Facebook too. The question is, what is the large target area versus small target area mean on the survey?
And this map, it is available on our community development website. Your large target area is going to be your North Killeen target area large. Wish I can bring it. Thank you. And Ms. Perez, I don't know if you are looking at that map. I know that survey says that first question. That map is available on the community development website, but it's broken down. You will see a green line that outlines the census tracts, and it's the North Killeen large target area, and then the North Killeen small target area, and then our yellow is the North Killeen revitalization area. I hope that helps.
Next question is from Vaughn Farley. They asked, where can I get that chart?
The map? Or,
They haven't specified yet.
okay. Yeah, the map is on the website, but when he says chart, I don't know if he's referring to the. Oh, okay, and that is on the website as well.
Okay, and also in the chat, the link for the map was dropped in there as
Okay.
well.
Thank you. So we thank you all very much. This has been a full presence today. We thank you because typically we have a few, so we appreciate you coming out, providing your input. Please know, again, you'll have plenty of opportunities to engage and provide your input during public comment period and public hearing. And we thank you for all that you do.
For those of you guys who are interested, Central Texas Homeless Coalition meeting will be on the 26th of February. Speaking as chairperson, it'll be at the
Hi.
Council of Governments.
Yes, sir. Let me.